Reframing negative situations. How often have you come into contact with a situation that was so negative and you felt, you know what, I just want to delete this situation from my head. I don't want to even think about it. I can't believe this happened to me. And I'm just going to delete this away from my head. There is nothing about the situation I want to retain. How often has that happened to you? In this podcast episode, we're going to be talking about reframing negative situations. Now, to put this in context, we're talking about negative situations in the way of your work as an HR professional and negative situations that could affect your career growth. How do you reframe them? Welcome. My name is Olutoyin Williams. I am your host and I am pleased to have this conversation with you. Welcome to this podcast. To get this conversation started, let's try and define what I mean by negative situation. A negative situation is a situation that has happened to you by way of work in the course of your HR career. Again, remember the conversation is really around our HR careers and things that happen to us in the course of our HR career. And you have said, you know what, this isn't what I've anticipated. This is not what I'm prepared to do. This is not something I even had in mind. So I can't deal with this. And some of those situations could be things like maybe you've just gotten a horrible feedback from your line manager. Maybe an initiative that you have poured so much time and energy has just tanked. Maybe you have just been passed over for a promotion. Maybe you have just finished your performance appraisal for the year and your rating was horrible. And you feel that was undeserved. That was not just, that did not take into consideration all of the great things that you've done in the year. And that's the negative situation. Or maybe you've even had a really long, blown out challenge with your line manager, bordering on performance, bordering on personality and things like that. And that's the negative situation you're dealing with. Now, how does that make you feel? How are you feeling right now? How are you feeling going back mentally to that situation? Now, there is one thing I want you to hold on to. I want you to hold on to the fact that this situation is not a reflection of your current capability. And the reason why I'm stating this very quickly is because sometimes we get into some conversations with individuals that are not trauma informed, and they lead you to this place where there's no help getting out. That's not what I want this podcast to achieve. So let's put some things, let's set some ground rules. Let's put some stakes in the floor, right? And let's set some boundaries right now. Whatever negative situation that has happened is not a reflection of your worth as a person, your worth as an HR professional. The negative situation that has happened is not you. It's a situation. It's not you. The negative situation that has happened is not a predictor of your future performance. The negative situation that has happened is not a stamp, a label of you. Now, if you need to go back and listen to this part of the podcast, please feel free to put it on auto replay. And the reason why I'm suggesting this is because for so many individuals, the negative situations that has happened to them in the course of their career, they have taken it on. It has become them. They've become one with the situation. They have labeled themselves with the situation. They have started to call themselves the situation. They have identified with the situation. That's not true. That is not true. And I need you to, in the first instance, be able to understand that that situation is not you. That situation is not a definition of you. That situation is not an indicator of your future performance. That situation is not an indicator of your future prospects in human resources. And I'm saying this to you, listening on this podcast on Spotify or watching this podcast on YouTube, because I don't want you to become one with that negative situation. I speak out of my personal experience and out of the experience of the people that I have been privileged to coach and work with. There are some situations that happen in our HR careers that are not pleasant. Unfortunately, we may not have received the help we should have received at the time when we needed it in order to be able to process that situation. And somehow we have taken on that situation. We've made it a part of our story. We've made it us. We've assumed the identity of that situation. That's not true. That negative situation sits apart from you, sits outside of you, sits away from you. There was just that interaction at that point in time. It's not a reflection of you. It's not a reflection of your capability. It's not a reflection of your potential. And I need you to know that. Okay? I need you to know that. So with that being said, let's sort of try and unpack this situation. What really happened? Who were the main actors? What did you think was going to happen? And what eventually happened? The purpose of this podcast, the theme of this particular series, this particular episode, in this series of addressing the HR career prospects of senior HR people, is to try and help you understand how to reframe a negative situation and how to see the best way to navigate that negative situation, and if possible, take some insights away from it. I don't want you to look at that situation and say, you know what, I'm going to lock it up. I'm going to lock it up, throw the key away. I don't want to be reminded of it. That's going to one day become a trauma. So instead of us saying, we're not going to talk about it, we're going to lock it up, we're going to just toss it away, we're going to try and delete it from our minds, I want us to take it out. I want us to very gently approach it, address it, and see what we can learn from it, and then lay it to rest. Lay it to rest. Okay? So let's go back to that situation. What happened? What did you think was going to happen? Is there anything you could have learned from it? Remember, the very first episode in this series, this special podcast series for senior HR professionals, was about managing feedback. The second episode was about managing your emotions. So now let's go back to this particular negative situation and let's try and unpack what actually happened. In the spirit of being able to take on feedback, let's look at that situation again. Did you do everything that you were supposed to have done correctly? It's possible, so check. In your interaction with the other parties to this negative situation, was there any adjustments that you could have potentially made in your tone, in your communications, your body language, your stance, your openness to discuss and communicate, your openness to shift grounds? Was there anything in there, in those things that I have mentioned just now, that could be better? Let's take it a step further. The interactions that followed, were you open and engaging? Was there at any point in time that you were closed off. Like, you know what? You were tired. You were frustrated. And for you, it was like, you know what? This is it. I'm done. I'm done with this conversation. I'm done with this. I'm done. I can't anymore. Did that happen? Did you allow your emotions to override? Because the honest truth is, as we navigate even more senior positions, we will have those scenarios where we could term it as a negative situation. The question is, have you got the tools to deal with it? Even if it didn't go the way you wanted to, do you understand how to process your emotions such that you don't then take on that negative situation and it becomes one with you? It becomes your identity going forward, because that's not true. That's not how to process it. Do you understand that? Do you know how to do that? I would love it if you can use this podcast to examine those negative situations that has happened to you by way of your career in human resources and start to piece apart what you could have done better. Because again, the focus of this particular conversation is reframing. How can you reframe it? What can you take out of it such that later on, if that situation sort of presents itself again, maybe in another form, you can identify it for what it is. You can understand what to change in order to have a different outcome. That is the purpose of this conversation. So what can you take out of it? How can you reframe the situation? Was it your openness to engage or your lack of openness to engage? Was it in your tone? Was it in your choice of words? Was it in your willingness to continue to keep the conversation going? Or were you closed off? Did you, at any point in time, allow your emotions to get the better of you? I can assure you those situations will come again. But I don't want you to feel like, you're a victim. These things happen to you. I mean, what could you have done wrong? What could you have possibly done wrong? There's nothing. You were infallible. Is that correct? Is it correct that you were infallible? That there was absolutely nothing you could have corrected? That's not true. That's not true. Was there something you could have done better? Yes. That's what we're looking for. What could you have done better? And when we have identified the things that you could have done better, let us put the situation to rest. Let's put it to rest. Let's not exhume it. Let's not exhume it. Let's not constantly poke it and bring back all of those negative emotions, because that's not what we're aiming for. That's not what we're looking to do. We're looking to take that negative situation. We're looking to learn from it. We're looking to reframe it. And then when we're done with that exercise, we're looking to put it back, lay it to rest, away permanently, because that negative situation is not our identity. That negative situation is not a predictor of our current performance. That negative is not an indicator of that negative situation is not an indicator of our current performance. That negative situation is not a predictor of our future performance. That negative situation is not a stamp or a label on us. It was just a situation. And that's what I want you to go away with. So as usual, I'm going to give you an assignment. And your assignment for this episode is, I want you to look at one or two negative situations that has happened to you in the course of your career as an HR professional. And I want you to use the tools that I have shared in this podcast to see how you can reframe it. And when you're done reframing, I want you to lay it to rest. I want you to put it away because it's not a reflection of your capability. It's not a predictor of your future performance. It is not a label for you. You're not one with it. It's a situation and you're putting it to rest. I really hope you have enjoyed listening to this episode of this podcast, this special podcast series that is designed for senior HR professionals who are looking to accelerate their career and get into the next level of growth. My name is Olutoyin Williams. This is the HR Growth Network podcast. You can find me on Spotify and you can find me on YouTube. If you've got any questions, any comments, you can get in touch with me by putting a comment down in the comments below, or you can find me on my website, www.olutoyinwilliams.co.uk. Till I come your way again, do take care and see you soon.